here to there. I mean, it's crazy that I'm really excited that he's on the show tonight.
Did you know he's a 2-time Emmy nominee?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
I didn't know.
We're gonna talk about that. Michael Burnett's.
Hello.
What's going on, my friend?
Oh, I'm just enjoying the cool weather here in Orlando.
See, that's everybody's all these like. Every time I interview people, they're like, "Oh, I'm in Florida, I'm in South Carolina, I'm in California," and I'm like, "I'm in Cleveland." It's been gray here for 7 years.
Well, I'm not kidding. It's been cool here. I mean, I think it only got up to like 80. I think today.
Oh no, I think we topped out at 47 today. So it hasn't stopped raining in 2 weeks. So doing good out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it should clear up soon. I'm sure it will.
Can't rain all the time, right?
Exactly.
Michael, thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
We have a lot to talk about because your resume stretches about 10 miles long, doesn't it?
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, which, I don't want to age myself, but yeah, Christian, 40 years.
So let's talk about the beginning then. Let's talk about 40 years ago. How did you end up with all this weirdness?
Well, I mean, it even goes further back. I started doing this as, kind of as a hobby as a kid. I grew up in Southern California, so I was close by. To Hollywood. I grew up in Anaheim. I was just a few minutes, about 20 minutes from Disneyland. I have always had a love since I was a little kid of horror films. So, back in those days, we didn't have cable TV. So I had to watch, the horror films on TV. There was we had a late night host. A lot of people back in those days, that was where we caught it. Every area had their own host. We had a guy when I was a kid called Sinister Seymour, and he'd come out of this really crappy, like, painted wall. It would open up and fog would come out, and he'd come out and he'd make little jokes. Like if the where you can see it now is like Svengoolie. Anybody who watches MeTV, if you love old horror movies, watch Svengoolie on MeTV every Saturday night. It's an awesome show, and he has all the good old, a lot of classics and stuff like that. I actually have done some work for them, but did some puppets for them. And, but anyway, that's how I got into it. I started watching, these horror films and started making my own. Back in those days, we had Super 8 film, it was a film. We didn't have video. Started making my own little movies. And of course, Halloween was huge for me. I started on my, basically the little stoop porch area of my parents' house, and eventually grew into the garage and, into the backyard, and then started doing it professionally. I was not too far from Knott's Berry Farm, and they're probably the first, real big theme park to do a haunted event. So when I was in college, I went to Cal State Fullerton, and the theater department there ran some of the teachers, and I think everybody there was a student, did all the makeup and costumes. So I got to work back in the early 80s at Knott's Berry Farm. So that was a lot of fun. And it's just been, I was just so happy I could turn my, my passion into a career. So I feel very lucky for that.
Since Tayen already let the cat out of the bag.
I'm sorry.
How does that get to now? See, I've heard it both ways, right? I've heard it 2 Emmy nominations. I've heard 1 Emmy nomination, another one from Fangoria, if I'm not mistaken. So clear the air for us right now. You're the only one that's going to be on this show that has those kind of credentials. So let's have the record straight here.
All right. 2 Emmy nominations and a Chainsaw Award nomination from Fangoria. So you kind of had it all right there.
So let's talk about that. Because that's got to be exciting, right? So how does one become an Emmy award nomination makeup artist?
So, all right. So going back to, when I first got into the business, or when I was looking at doing this as a business, I wanted to direct. I mean, make movies was my thing, but they always had special makeup or monsters or creatures or, like $6 Million Man with the animatronic kind of stuff. So I loved all that kind of stuff. And I started college. I started college in 1981, and that was the beginning of the horror stuff. That's when American Werewolf in London came out. That's when the first Freddy Krueger movies came out. And I can tell you a Freddy Krueger story in a minute if I remember to get back to that. Jason, all those movies came out in the early 80s. So I was already doing this stuff. I was already making prosthetics and masks and all that I had learned from Famous Monsters of Filmland and Starlog and Fangoria and all those magazines, because we didn't have the internet. I mean, there was no Google, none of that stuff was available back then. So anyway, I went to college, like I said, at Cal State Fullerton. I was a theater major, and it wasn't very far from it. I was only about 50 miles from Hollywood. So some of the older students there were already, because there weren't a lot of people doing this back then. It was just starting, and like I said, that's, felt very lucky I got into it right at the right time. So I started working, somebody said, hey, there's this movie called, they want to do a stretchy nose and they don't have anybody to do it. And these were like no budget movies, but I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And I just started, I started working in the business, started doing these low budget movies and meeting people and shops. And they're just, there was no Face Off. There were no schools. Well, that's not true. There were a couple of schools, but they were more beauty oriented. They did have some special effects stuff, but there was a handful of people doing it. And so it made it real easy. Totally the opposite of what it is today. There were days that I had to, I get 3 or 4 job offers. I'd have to turn one down. I mean, nowadays, it's people are looking for the work. I mean, everything is so cool. There's so many new products and so much to learn, but job wise, there's still a career to be made there, but it's definitely a lot more challenging than it was back in those days.
So how do you get to the point of your phone rings and it's like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, you got an Emmy nod. Like, that's got to be an exciting day. So
yeah, that was very cool. That was very cool. I did a makeup for the first Emmy nod was for a makeup for basically it was kind of like Inside Edition kind of show that was on back in those days. It was kind of a entertainment news show. And we did this character, Howard Stevens. He was a comedian, or he is a comedian. And he was doing a thing about losing weight and all that. So I did him basically I did a nutty professor kind of thing, a big, kind of fat suit and makeup. And then he would go to these different places that serve, the workout places and, restaurants that were catered to, healthy eating. And then by the end of the show, he was back to his normal weight. So, and then for the second one, I got nominated for Star Trek. I worked on Star Trek, Star Trek Enterprise, which was the last regular one to come out of Paramount. And that was an awesome experience because I love the history of all this stuff. And that was shot on the lot at Paramount. And Michael Westmore of the Westmore family, who, his uncle Bud Westmore ran the makeup department back in the day of Universal. He did Abbott and Costello, Meet the Wolfman, all those kind of movies, all those TV shows that were shot back in those days. You'll see Bud, if you watch some of the old shows like that, you'll see his name on there. The Munsters, that kind of, and all those kind of movies. But that it was run like the old studio. Like nowadays, I have my own shop. I had my own shop in LA, and the movies come up. They would call me and say, "Hey, we're doing this." I do a bid. But back in those days, it was at the studio. The studios had an internal makeup department, and Star Trek was probably the very last one that was like that, like old school. And so they had a whole building that they'd make the prosthetics, and we, run the foam, then we'd do all the makeup and application, making all the aliens. And it was a really cool time.
What about the Chainsaw Award?
The Chainsaw Award was for a horror movie I did with Dee Snider from Twisted Sister called Strangeland. So, yeah.
So what came first? FrightNight Studios or Halloween Horror Nights?
Halloween Horror. I started Halloween Horror Nights in California, so I had my own company there called MVP Michael Burnett Productions, and we did. I started doing movies and TV, and the thing about movies and TV, like it's a seasonal kind of thing. Like if you get on a series, most of the studios would just do most of the studios would, they would hire people, come in, do a job. The job they'd finish it, and then there'd be downtime in between them. And I didn't like that. I wanted to have a crew that I could keep on full time. And I loved doing movies and TV and the makeup, and I loved Halloween, and I love doing other, like sculptural pieces, resin kits. It's kind of a whole nother animal. But so basically, I set my shop up to do all those things. So, because like we would do a TV series. I did a TV series back in the 90s called All That. It was kind of a kid's version of Saturday Night Live. And it would do, I'm trying to remember now, 7 or 8 months, but then we'd have, 4 or 5 months off. And so, I had other things like Halloween events and stuff doing that kind of stuff. And I did a lot of work for Universal. I did walk around costumes like their Frankensteins and mummies and all that kind of stuff. And then when they started, they said, hey, let's do a Halloween event. There were a bunch actually before Halloween Horror Nights that we did in Hollywood before Universal Florida even existed. They weren't to that scale by any stretch, but what was I going to say? But then, then Halloween Horror Nights happened and became very popular in Florida. So they decided they wanted to do it. They wanted to do it in Hollywood. So I'd already had a relationship with them for doing these other things. So we started doing it. I think that would have been in 1997. I want to say that was the first year we did it in Hollywood. And so I did it for 4 years. And then in 2000, they decided not to do it. They stopped doing it. So we only did it for 4 years, and then they took a pause, which I think that was, the year 9/11 happened. So I think they were, Florida had to make a lot of changes at the last minute for their event. And that's, where I did all those things. But then come 2004, the movie business was changing a lot. I was moving out of LA. Every job, well, not every job, but most of the jobs, for years and years, I was doing TV series and movies, and it was all shooting in LA or in the area. We might leave for a week or two at the most, but it was all there. I had a young daughter at the time, and it was great. I actually took her. They let me bring her on set sometimes. She now works at Universal here in Florida in the art department. So then a couple of one sibling came along, and at that point, this would be the early 2000s, and the movie industry had sort of changed. I mean, every job I was doing was either out of the country or out of the state, and I was gone for a long, long time. And I was kind of bummed because I had this new baby, and I was missing all those special moments. And lo and behold, Universal Florida called me, said, "Hey, we're looking for a new person to run our makeup department. Do you that knows movies, not?" They knew me because I'd worked with them and made a lot of their stuff. And they said, that knows these. Do you know anybody you can recommend? I'm like, So my wife and I were chatting. My wife Lynn is from Pennsylvania. She, as a kid, in her younger days, she would go down and vacation in Florida, so she loved Florida. And And it was like I was talking about with the Paramount. It was like on a studio, a makeup department. You know, we mostly do the stuff for the theme park, but we did commercials and some other shoots, but mainly the theme park stuff. And we're like, hey, maybe this would be a good fit. It's a 9-to-5 kind of job, which is virtually impossible to find in this business. And it was still doing what I love to do. So I said, sure. So we, like the Beverly Hillbillies, we packed it all up, but we went the opposite direction and went to Florida, where I ran the makeup department at Universal for about 16 years. So
it looks like Tayen's chomping at the bit. I think she's got some questions from the board here.
I was checking the comments on here and here. I have 2 questions so far.
Sure.
So it's Mike Murray, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's who I thought it was. So,
Hey, Mike.
What do you think of? He said, "What do you think of the online school for like Stan Winston kind of school thing?"
Stan Winston is great. It's so basically, and back in the day, like we were talking about. In fact, let me say, I've got one here. Thing. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. All right. So back in the day, like we were saying, it was really hard. It was really hard to learn. I will get to a more direct answer, but it's going to kind of go the long route here.
I thought he was getting something to throw.
No, I know. I'm not. I don't have any breakaway stuff. If anything I break, I will regret it in the morning. So back in the day when I first started this, so when like I was saying, I've been doing this, I started as a kid. So when I was like I want to say sixth grade, you had to write a report, like what do I want to be when I grow up, right? So I wanted to be a makeup artist, special makeup effects artist, or, work in the movie industry. So I called Universal Studios, eventually got to this really nice lady who gave me the home phone numbers of several effects people. I don't remember exactly who they were now because this was a long time ago. But so I called these guys. They weren't super happy that this lady gave this kid their home numbers, but they talked to me. But I have to be honest, they were very discouraging. It was like, oh, you have to get in the union. It's impossible, and you give it up. You'll never don't even think about being it. I'm like, screw that. I'm going to do this. So I learned a lot through Fangoria. Like I said, Famous Monsters back in those days. Actually, Fangoria wasn't even around till the late 70s. But and then there's a guy, and I'm gonna tip my camera up a little bit. You see that? See this right here?
The head in the background.
That's a light. The head, yeah, the head in the background, wearing some glasses. Those are some 3D glasses. So that's a life cast of Dick Smith, who is godfather of makeup effects. He did The Exorcist. He did Ghost Story. He did Godfather. He did all the Godfathers. He did what the heck am I trying to think of here? He did Little Big Man. He developed most of the techniques that we still use today, and a lot of them we still use in the way he did it. They're modified. So I got a hold of him. He lived in New York. I got a hold of him, and he would talk with me on the phone. He would send me stuff. I mean, he was super nice, and I'm like, that's the way it should be. I mean, he shared information. And so when I first got in the business, so what I did back in, let me see if I got one that you can see the picture. So back in the day, the youngsters aren't going to know what this is. This is a VHS tape.
I know
Yes.
what that is.
Yeah. Well, you do, because you hang out with all us old people. But so this is a VHS tape. So I did a series of videos. I think I was the first one to do it. It was called The Art of Special Makeup Effects. Let me show you. And I shouldn't do this because I'm going to regret it later, but let me see if it'll focus. That's me back in my mustache mullet days. So I made this series of videos, and here's like, this is one with the zombie. The camera doesn't focusing very well. So that's like a zombie makeup. Shows you step by step how to do it. And that was a way I actually got these distributed through a company called Suncoast Video. So they were all over the world. I mean, not the world, they were all over the country. And, it was a pretty cool way to do it. So flash forward to today, quite a few years ago, I couldn't even tell you, it's been at least 10. It's been more than 10, I'm sure. But Stan Winston, who's well-known makeup artist, he unfortunately passed away early. He was ill and passed away, but he did Jurassic Park, Terminator, Terminator 2, tons of videos, Pumpkinhead, just tons and tons of stuff. And, probably one of the most prolific makeup artists. And his son, after he passed away, his son started the Stan Winston School, which is basically it started out as DVDs. I don't believe it started with streaming right away. And so they came after the days of VHS, and they have hundreds, probably thousands, I would guess by now, of hours of really, really good content. My videos, I tried to make them short and concise. Again, it was on VHS tape. So like this video is like 45 minutes and it shows you step by step. Their videos will show you like almost in real time on some of them, step by step. So they're literally hours, and there's tons of things that relate, to the haunt industry. I wish I had access to, the kind of information that's available now. But so to answer Mike's question, I think the Stan Winston School is a great way to learn. A lot of people need structure. Makeup schools are great too. If that works for you, they can be very expensive though. But you've got somebody working with you, and for some people that works better. But what I like about the Stan Winston thing is you can kind of do it on your own. They have a streaming setup now, so you can do a subscription. You have access to all their videos. You used to have to buy them like this. Like I said, a lot of people ask me, why do you have these? Why do you get this stuff? It's like I take classes, for things that I already know how to do, but I like to see somebody else might have. I feel like if I get one good idea or one good technique, which I almost always do, at least get one, learn something or a different way to look at something, I think I've learned something. A lot of people think, I've been doing this for 5 years, so I know everything. It's like, you never know everything. And so these are two of the DVDs that Stan Winston makes. This is like how to make a mold. Like this is one of the early ones. I'd buy them. I've probably got 80 of these. Now I don't. I wouldn't even keep buying them. It would cost too much, and I would fill a whole room. The streaming is great because you can just watch it on your computer, whenever. But so
you got another one there, Tayen?
I do. Keith said, "Does Michael still want to direct a film?"
Yes, I actually have directed a movie. Right before I moved to Florida, I directed a film called Creature Unknown, and I actually have a couple of movies in development right now that we're going to shoot here in Florida. So,
Was I involved?
Well, we're still in development.
We're
not at that point yet. So you might be Tayen if you're available. If I can afford you, I will. Well, then I can probably afford that. Yeah. So we're working out. We're developing. We got a script. We got a movie called The Executioner. It's a really cool, hardcore horror film. Lots of effects. We're still trying to put together the budget for that. And another low budget movie that probably will end up getting shot first, which is we don't have, our working title is not ready for prime time yet, but yeah, that's definitely still in my something I'm interested in.
All right.
Wow, that was a short answer.
So let's get into FrightNight Studios.
All right.
would kind of put you in the limelight to hunters all across the world.
Cool.
Because
So
you run a company that has, I mean, my God, there's not very many people that can pack a booth as much as FrightNight Studios can. The amount of stuff that you guys produce and have, I mean, your catalogs are insane. I don't know if Chris can bring up the website to this or not, but you guys offer a lot of stuff. So touch on some of the products that you guys.
So let me give you a really quick background on FrightNight. That's a shout out. So FrightNight is actually my wife's company. So when we moved to Florida, my wife does this, Lynn. She does all this. She's an excellent sculptor painter. She's probably watching right now. Her molds leave a little bit to the desired. I try to do the molds for her, but she does. She just made a mold today. But she's an excellent sculptor, painter, great ideas. So when we moved here, she couldn't work at Universal. Like when we did stuff at Universal in Hollywood, they were hiring us as a subcontractor, and there was no. But in what I ran, I was an employee. I was a manager at Universal, so she couldn't work for me because they don't let people that that are in relationships work together, especially not where one's in charge of the other. So we created FrightNight. The movie FrightNight is one of our favorite movies. I always loved that name. And I actually talked to Tom Holland, the director of the movie. He goes, FrightNight, I should have copyrighted that thing. I said, hey man, it's all out of love. We love that movie. Love it. So, but ours is all one word, FrightNight. In the movie, it's 2 words. But so we started that so she could make, so in the beginning, the first few years, she did mostly work for Universal and Busch Gardens here in Florida. And after, like I said, it's been about 5 or 6 years now when I left Universal, then I joined with her and we went back into doing our stuff. Now we've continued to do movies, not remotely as many over the years while we were here in Florida, but a lot of this stuff is from, like, if you see that one right next to that one right there, that's actually that's a mold of a body from a movie that we've converted and used for this. So we have a lot of stuff like that. We have a tentacle, 9-foot tentacle that was originally made for Baywatch. So we have hundreds. There you go. There's the tentacle right there. See that green tentacle? So that tentacle originally was created for Baywatch. So we have, we have hundreds and hundreds of molds. We haven't even, really scratched the surface. Every year we're trying to add some new ones. Up until a few years ago, we mainly did custom work. We'd make stuff. We didn't really have a catalog. People would see pictures and go, hey, can I get that? Can I get that? And then, when I left Universal, I went right back into making movies. And, I got to be honest, it didn't have the same appeal to me that I thought that it did back in the day. We did a TV series and a couple of films, and it was like, I still enjoy doing it, but it just, I don't know, I'm older, the business is different. We'll still do it. I still, I'm the right project, I'll happily do it. But, we kind of have more enjoyment making these things. Like that's definitely one of my wife's creations. We did a mermaid tail that was a prosthetic mermaid tail for somebody. And then she goes, oh, this would be fun. So she made a casting of that, took our Renee body and combined it into a dead mermaid. And we do an aerial version of that, by the way. Anybody who's a Little Mermaid fan. So, so a lot of these molds and these pieces were originally from, movies and stuff. That's actually my face on that guy there. That's one of the advantages, because it's really expensive and time consuming to make a full body mold or, to do that. So, and we do that. We try to add 2 or 3 every year of new pieces and new molds, and then also introduce, because I have molds that are, 10, 15 years old that would be cool, but we've just never had time to get to them. So we're introducing new parts and pieces every year, and hopefully next year at HauntCon we'll have, because HauntCon's right in our backyard. We'll have some new cool stuff. Because I'm pretty sure that's in February, so it's going to be the very first haunt event of the year. So we'll have some fun stuff. Yeah, anywhere, exactly.
So you're also running a discount code as well. So why don't you plug that for us?
Okay, so one of the challenges we've had over the last couple of years, and especially with the pandemic, is our costs have gone up. Just like they go up every few years. Especially we use tons of urethanes, and the last few years they've gone up 30-40%. So so basically at the shows we haven't been, this year we weren't really running any specials. We used to do that because instead of raising our prices again, we decided we're just not going to do the we're not going to run the discount. So this is kind of a rare thing. We'll make a specific piece and offer that as a special at the show, but again, with the urethane costs are so much, we're trying to keep that in a reasonable field, and I think we're definitely very competitive with the other people who make bodies at this level, and a lot of our stuff has been in movies, but anyway, so to plug the thing, so any order of $500 or more will get 10% off. We're still taking orders. It is starting to get filled up. If you want it, I would say we're looking at probably late August, early September, depending on what the prop is. Because we basically, when the orders come in, we put them in rotation. Some things, smaller pieces like the little pumpkin that's right there in the middle. I've got one right here, our little shrunken pumpkin. These things get mass produced. We have a ton of these. But the bigger bodies, while we try to stock a few here and there, although this time of year we can't really keep them in stock, it's very hard to stock these big giant items. So they're kind of made to order. Plus we customize them. So, and some of the like that clown, you could say, oh, well, I wish he had an all red wig. Absolutely, we can do that. Some of the when you click on it, some of them will have a hair color choice, but we can within reason we can customize any of these. Usually, sometimes depending on what it is, sometimes there might be an additional charge if we're adding some major thing, changing a different bigger head or adding a bunch of stuff. Like we just did a new character called actually, what do we call him? He should be on the very top of the page. No, yeah. Oh, that's him, right? Yeah, it's him next to the guy in his underwear there. Second one over, that guy right there. So anyway, we started watching The Last of Us. Awesome show. So this is a character. We took our Big Bob guy and added some mushrooms to him. So that's a customized piece. And, so anything anybody wants, if you say, oh, I love that body, but I wish it was this, shoot me an email, let me know, and we can certainly take a look at that and customize to almost anything.
Awesome. So get your orders in now so you can get them by haunt season this year. You guys know how that all goes. Yeah. Where can we find you in FrightNight Studios? On the interwebs and everywhere else.
Out on the interwebs, we are at FrightNightStudios.com. We are on Instagram at FrightNight Studios. We are on Facebook, FrightNight Studios. And if you want to see, if you're interested in seeing any of the movie makeup stuff, we have some of that on there. Because some of the stuff we've done, more recent stuff through Fright Night is up there. But if you want to see some of the, go back, like I said, my stuff goes back to the 80s. You can go to MBPFX. and it's on that's on Facebook and Instagram, MBPFX, and or my personal website is michaelburnett.com. So there's lots of places, lots of ways you can find it. So,
Well, Michael, thank you for coming on to the show tonight. I feel like
thanks for having me.
a long show with you. Like the wealth of knowledge that you have is just insane, and your contribution to this industry is unprecedented. And I want to thank you for everything that you've done and everything that you're going to do, because you never disappoint. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. I hope I didn't bore you with my teals talking.
No, I'm sure we're
I got a word in there. Okay. Anytime, let me know. Anytime, I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you.
All right. So there's still time, guys, because we got a couple more things that we got to get covered here. So go ahead and get your hashtags in now. This is last call for hashtag HauntCon 2024 to get your Fear Expo shirt, hoodie, and hat. So let's go ahead and get those